Hi, hello there. I'm Sin. We're in the Book Nook, and today we're going to talk about a book by an author that I had been meaning to read for a while. I kept hearing about this author quite a bit, so I ran into one of their books at the library and I picked it up. And it was really good. And that author is Nnedi Okorafor, and the book is She Who Knows. This is going to be a duology. It is part sci-fi, part fantasy. It is infused with West African culture and spirituality, but also like almost like a kind of magic crackling at the edges of this. And it follows the character Najiba, and she is 13 years old. And so her people, the Osunu, they travel this road called the Salt Road. And only her sect of people travel this road because all others who have tried to, they don't end up coming back. No one really knows what happens to them and whatnot. And there is this whole lore of how the Salt Road kind of came into existence to be part of what their people do in their culture. There were these two women back in the day who discovered this dead lake, and it was filled with salt. And that salt is what her people, they take that salt. Salt is life. That's like a big concept of this book. Short little novella, and it's really good. I flew through the pages. Just a beautiful, powerful little story. And so this Dead Salt Lake, her and her family and the people that live in her village, they're all called Adoro number 5 or Adoro number 6. I believe she lives in Adoro number 5. And her people, they had been slaves, but to gain their freedom, they became what was known as slaves to this goddess, Adoro, and became protected by her to have their own freedom from how they were living before that. And so this Salt Road, even though it was discovered by two women, has only been traveled by men for years and years and years. And there's nowhere that it really says that women can't go. They just don't seem to. But one day, Najiba, she's 13, she wakes up and she's like, oh my God, it's time to go. She feels the calling and she goes in. Her dad is with her mother. She, before he can even say it, is like, I had the calling to go on the Salt Road. The mom's like, what? You tell her before you tell me? And he's like, I didn't tell her. I didn't tell her anything. He hadn't even told the mom that he was going yet. So he ends up taking her. And this kind of starts a conversation in her village amongst the other families because this was kind of unheard of. And so she ends up going, and they're going to meet up with her two brothers, Rin and Jer. They're already out there, and so they're going to travel, and this is how they make their livelihood. They go, they sell the salt at the market. A proceed of their sales goes back to the village to help the village, expand, or if they need a better building for medical facilities or to hire a doctor or teacher and stuff like that. The part of what they make all goes back into the community, which is a good thing, right? So she gets this calling, and when they go, she's tall and she's skinny, and she kind of has like the build of a lanky boy at this point in time when she's this age. And she tells her friends that she's been called, and the guy that she's kind of been like intimate with, his name's Obi, and then her friend, this girl Peter, who is one of her closest friends, they usually go to this paper house, and the paper house is a library where all their knowledge and books are kept. She tells them, and they just don't get it. They're like, you can't go, you're a girl, you should ignore the calling. Everyone basically tells her she should ignore the calling. And when her brothers like find her with her father on the road, they're like, you should have ignored the calling. And it's like, men are the worst. But even her friend who was a girl didn't like get it. And so she goes, and they find really rare salt. Her father is really good at finding like some of the most unique and clear and just really quality salt to go sell at the market. And so they've gone to this dead lake. Then they go to the market, and Najiba wears her veil just in case, so that, no one knows there's a woman here, because, people can't handle a woman in the marketplace. That's just unheard of. So anyways, she's got a veil on. The dad and the other brother, the older one, Rayan, they're off doing something. So it's just her and Jer, and they're kind of sitting there. And then all of a sudden, like Najiba, like almost like she's possessed, decides she's gonna be like a freaking auctioneer and yelling out to tell people to come see their salt. It's the best salt that one can find. Who's going to have the best tasting meals? Who's going to show their wife that they have the best salt, the clearest salt, the da 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 da. And she sells it, and she sells it all of it for the most money that their family has ever made. And when she's done, it's like this possession that took her goes away and she's normal again. And she's like, "Oh my God, Dad's gonna kill me." And she's like, "Jer, you gotta take the blame for this." And so the father comes back and he's like, "Where's our salt? This is how we're supposed to live for the next year." And he's like, "What the heck?" And Jared's like, sorry, I sold it all. I don't know. And then like the dad and the brother see all the bags of money and they're like, "Holy crap," because it's like way, 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 way more money than they've ever made selling the salt. And they're like, "Oh man, you're gonna have to do this again next year. Holy bananas." So they're excited about this, but they're like, "Hey, let's get out of here before anyone notices the amount of money we made, or things they've been screwed over and this, that, and the other." Because it takes them 2 weeks to get home on the Salt Road, to get back home, so people could rob them or come up on them and whatnot. So they get back, and every year now, Najiba goes and she travels the Salt Road. But also, other girls are starting to go with their families and to travel the Salt Road. This is a good thing. Heck yeah, Najiba, for starting this conversation that the village didn't know they needed to have. She goes to the paper house and she starts digging into like some of this literature on certain subject matter. Oh, and I forgot to tell the part about, so the first time she's on the road, and it's just her and her dad before they meet up with the brothers. They're riding along on their camels and they see what is called this witch. And a witch is like a little mini tornado that'll be on the road. And Najiba, without thinking, she's searching. She like runs because she wants to see it. And she runs up on it. And her dad's like, "No, don't do that." And gets sucked up in the witch and is like in it. And then it sets her back down kind of hard. There's pain. It wasn't like horrible where she broke any bones or anything. She's fine, but she is kind of in a little bit of pain. But when she was in that witch, something happened to her that like unlocked something in her mind where almost like I guess what she finds at the library, she starts getting into reading about what would be known as astral travel. And so she starts to try to practice this, to do astral projection and travel. And so that plays in a part of it. And just traveling the Salt Road and becoming into more of her own and finding out who she is. You follow her for many years and then at a point discovers that she is a sorceress. And it's this really gripping, powerful, tiny little novella. I will definitely be reading the next one in this duology. I think it's only going to be a duology as far as I know. I don't know if it's going to be a trilogy. And then there's a link to another book or series that she wrote that I can't think of the name of right now, that this character is like tied to. I don't remember off the top of my head, but if you're looking for a really great short novella that's like a sci-fi fantasy and just a nice quick read that was super addictive, with like the characters are great, the story is great, it's just very engrossing, and I flew through the pages. I read it probably, I want to say, in like 2 hours, maybe. It was maybe about 150 pages, if that. I don't know when the next book comes out, but I'm definitely going to be looking into more of their books. If you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.